All right, guys, that'll do it. That'll do it for the regular season. The Mariners played their final regular season game yesterday, and I was there. I went to the game. Game number 162, I was there. I got to see some pretty cool stuff, including a walk-off win. And, well, there's still more baseball to be played, so that's pretty cool right there, right? 2022 Seattle Mariners finish 90 and 72, second place in their division, and clinching a playoff spot with a little bit of room to spare. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And it was a great season, a lot of fun. It's certainly the best Mariners team they've had in a long time. This is not like last year where the team won 90 games. We have the same record as we did last year, but I think we all know this season, this team is much better. This team is much better than last year's team. Last year, our ace for a good chunk of the year was supposed to be Marco. This year, he could barely stay in the starting rotation. Last year, we brought up Logan Gilbert to give him some MLB level experience and let him pitch at a subpar level because we wanted him to get that experience for this year. And this year, he was legitimately really, really good, borderline elite. You're adding a guy like a George Kirby who immediately basically became an ace. Castillo. The lineup overall, I don't know if it was better, the bats, but I don't think it was much worse. I think we upgraded at third base. You probably saw an upgrade. Julio alone. Julio alone makes the lineup arguably better, even though you did lose stuff like Mitch Haniger's great season, where Mitch misses most of this year and scuffles a little bit when he does play. Even though you are losing a little bit of oomph there, Julio alone makes up for it a little bit. So it's a better team. It's a much better team. They deserve their 90-win record. It's not like last year where I don't know how that team won 80 games, let alone 90. I know how this team got to 90 wins. They deserve it. And I want to give a lot of credit to the people that made it happen, Service and Dipoto. And these are two guys that Mariners fans all over the place have occasionally really gone after. But I'm going to say it again. This team does not have a very high payroll. This team doesn't have a ton of money to spend. And the fact that they're able to produce these results with what I believe is still a bottom 10 payroll is great, is phenomenal. And shout out to them for doing it. And now we've got some more games to play. I'm going to talk about the playoff series against Toronto in a little bit here, obviously hoping for the best. But I'm aware these things are just kind of random, so I'm along for the ride. I want to talk about the regular season that we had. I want to talk about where we're pointed from here, right? Because the important thing to keep in mind here is how much this team should be able to keep things going for the foreseeable future. 21-year-old Julio was our best player this year. A 21-year-old was our best player. And usually when you say that about a baseball team, it'd be like, they're so bad, their best player was 21 years old. No. Julio, he gives you power, he gives you contact, he gives you speed, he's a good fielder, or at least a slightly above average fielder. He's got a good enough arm, he had volume, he was doing it all out there. Legitimately our best player, unless you want to argue like Castillo, who got here at the trade deadline, or Kirby, who wasn't even in the major leagues when the season started. No. Julio had to have been our best player this year. When your best player is 21 years old in his first ever year getting any kind of major league experience, the future by default is kind of bright. And you also look at a guy like Cal, who's 25, Cal Riley. And he's not going to be up for an extension for years. It's going to be years before he's up for an extension. This guy's Ops Plus was 122, and remember how bad he was at the start of the year? He looked like he had never picked up a bat in his life for maybe a month and a half. And then he suddenly found something, and he might be the best offensive catcher in the sport. Legitimately, based off the last 4.5 months, when he found his stride, he probably is. He probably has to be the best offensive catcher in the league. And he's good behind the plate. And he's good throwing. throwing out stealing runners. He might win the Gold Glove this year. I don't know. But somebody on this defense probably should, and he's, to me, the most likely candidate. These guys are young. These guys have their best years in front of them. Ty France, look, he had a good year. He had a really nice year, and he was battling injuries all year, and he had 2, maybe even 3, you could say, stretches where he looked lost at the plate. He's 27. He's still cheap. Like this is a foundational piece, and he's got... We are a good 4 or 5 years away before we even have to think about his age. And you do have the tantalizing possibility of a guy like Kelnick being able to get it together. He's only 22. He's had 2 straight productive Septembers. He shows you some intriguing things. Obviously, overall, he's not a good MLB player yet. But the fact that we're having this conversation in September again tells you the potential is still there. The ability is still there. And by the way, he's got this tremendous opportunity to prove himself in the playoffs now, because we need him, because Haggerty's out and Winker's out for at least the start of the playoffs for Winker, and definitely the whole playoffs for Haggerty. And it feels like there's something there now. And I couldn't have said that a month ago. There's no way I could have said that about Kelnick a month ago. There are older guys on this team. There are. Suarez is going to be 31 next year, but I'm not worried about Suarez suddenly forgetting how to hit the ball. Like, that's going to be with him for a little while here. Santana, but I mean, look, Santana's a basically league average batter, and he's somebody who you're totally fine hitting about 200 because he hits a lot of home runs. So if Santana does come back, which I don't know if he will or not, then it's not like you need a ton from him. And Haniger, yeah, him too. Haniger is a concern. We don't know if he's going to be back, but we had success this year. We won games with Haniger not really doing that much. He had 55 hits on the season. He had massive stretches of the season where he was either not playing or not playing well. So you can win without Mitch. I believe Winker next year. He's only 28. He's going to have had the opportunity to adjust to the AL pitching. I think that's big. I'm not ruling out the Crawford bounce back because he has shown that he is capable of playing well. His Ops Plus was around 160 for the first month and a half to 2 months of the year. So I feel like that sample size is enough for me to not consider that a fluke. And he's had a Gold Glove before, so the fact that he's been terrible on defense this year, you know he can be better than that. Sam Haggerty, I don't expect him to ever be as good of a hitter as he was this year. I don't know where that batting prowess came from, but he will always be a valuable outfielder, defensive player, and pinch runner. Even if he loses his bat a little bit, it's fine. So what I'm trying to say is, you look at this lineup, and you think to yourself, look, if we can add maybe a second baseman, somebody like Xander from Boston, Bogarts. If you can bring him in, put him at second base, massive upgrade at that spot, probably a better defensive player too. I mean, pretty much everyone's better on defense than Frazier. It's a young team that should be good for a while, right? Because these pieces that are supporting the foundation are so young. Julio, France, Cal. And then you have everything else. What if Luis Torrens turns his career around now? Because he's been playing great lately. I was hard on him to start the year. He's been playing great lately. Toro, bad year. No doubt about it. Really, really rough year for Toro. But the dude had his moments, and it felt like near the end of the season this year. I know it was against substandard pitching, but he was playing a little bit better. So this lineup, you're going to have to add a little bit to it in the offseason, but when you take a look at the body of work this year, if you take a look at these guys and how old they are and their status going into 2023, it feels like something really good can be built here. You got to upgrade at second base for sure. Maybe shortstop. I think you're kind of, the die is cast on Crawford. He's the guy, and you got to write it out with him. But we've got a core of a lineup here with Julio being he can bat anywhere in the lineup almost, and it's fine. Cal, your power hitter. France batting second or third, great. If you bring back Haniger and he has a healthy year next year, because look, the guy played less than 60 games this year, you are probably looking at him costing relatively little. I don't think he's going to command the big contract. You may very well be able to keep him if you want to. And if you get the Winker bounce back, which I believe you will, and Suarez holds on for another year, this is something that can carry over. This is not just a one-hit wonder team. All right? We survived and got to 90 wins despite Frazier being a huge disappointment, despite Haniger missing over 100 games, despite Winker being a letdown. And by the way, Winker, people need to lay off on that guy. I think he still had a slightly above average year at the plate. I know he's bad on defense, but don't put him out there and you won't have that problem. So something special is being built here. You got to add to it. You're going to have to get lucky with some of these guys. Like maybe you need a Taylor Trammell, who did play well early in the season, to improve next year. Maybe you need Dylan Moore to have another good year next year. He was actually pretty solid this year for all things considered. I mean, I like him as a utility player at the minimum. But this is a team that has been built in such a way that I think they're going to be good for a while. And that's just the rotation. What about this pitching staff, okay? Most of these guys are locked up for years. Ray, Castillo, they both got long-term extensions now. Gilbert and Kirby are still really young, 25, 24. They both probably have better baseball in front of them, and they're already pitching phenomenally well. Kirby, as a rookie, 3.39 ERA. Phenomenal control. Very rarely loses control and walks people. So this pitching staff speaks for itself. And the bullpen, look, I trust this team to build a bullpen. If they lose some of these guys in the offseason, if they lose a guy like a Sewald, if they lose a guy like a Castillo, if they lose a guy like Festa, I'm not going to sweat it because this team has proven they know how to build a bullpen. All right? If they have to rebuild the bullpen a little bit, obviously I don't want to lose these guys. I really don't want to lose Munoz because he's different. He's special. But this team has proven they can put together a bullpen out of pieces that you wouldn't necessarily have thought would be an all-star bullpen. But we had one of the best bullpens in the league this year. It was deep. It had studs in it. It had solid guys in it. It had guys who were just kind of like adequate. And I believe that whatever happens this offseason with these guys, remember, we might get Sadler back as well. Whatever happens, you've got the opportunity to do something really, really good, even if you lose guys, because that's what this front office has proven they can do. These guys are, we don't have Mariano Rivera. We don't have Trevor Hoffman. We don't have relievers and closers that everyone in the world knows about. No, we have guys that, in some cases, have been around for a minute, have been bouncing around the league, and nobody really thought that much of. And we got it done. So, exciting. Definitely exciting. Don't forget about Matt Brash, by the way. He's got some nasty stuff, and he's been great since he got moved to the pen. I don't know what's going to happen with Marco. I mean, yesterday could have been Marco's final game as a Mariner. Flexen will be back because of his contract, but he's proven that he's a useful, valuable player. He ended up having approximately league average year. If he ends up being your number 5 or something, then that's adequate. And let's remember, let's keep some things in mind here with the pitchers. Robbie Ray ended up having a league average year as a starting pitcher, despite having that miserable start where he was either tipping his pitches or he forgot to use enough pitches or whatever. And while we're at it, Castillo had a slightly above average year as a reliever, despite having a miserable start. At one point, his ERA was like 8 or 9, I think. So if those guys can be the person they were in the last 4.5 months rather than the first month plus, then they're going to be much better. And this team is going to be all the more dangerous for it. By the way, Matt Brash, almost all of his bad performances came as a starter. Once he moved to the pen, he was probably a little above average. So this is a great foundation, great season, great team, a lot of fun. I'm hoping it goes on from here, but regardless of what happens next, I'm really happy about the way this team came together this year. All right. See you guys later. Go Mariners. I will talk about the playoff series probably tomorrow. See y'all then.